Boy, I got something for everybody in this one, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday, I addressed a bill and I said that half-truths can be whole lies. And so I got something probably to get everybody fired up this morning. I'm going to tell 100% of the truth, whether the members of this chamber on either side of the aisle like it or not. Truth number one, climate change is real. It is real. It is absolutely, positively, demonstrably real, and we know this because of science. We know this because geology tells us that as long as there has been a climate, it has been changing. We know this because of anthropology. Mr. Speaker, I love to point out to people that there are caves off the coast of Marseille, France, that are 124 feet below the water with cave paintings in them. These caves were inhabited 19,000 years ago, which sounds like a lot, but really it's not. And so what we know is that the climate has changed so much that in just 10 times since the Romans ruled Europe and North Africa, 10 times the amount of time since then, those caves were above water. The sea has risen that much. We know this because recently, Mr. Speaker, the global temperature was rising almost as fast as it did in the 1860s. Back when the population of the Earth was 1/7 of what it is now, and we hadn't invented the internal combustion engine. Mr. Speaker, we know that this is true, and we know the last number is true because of meteorology, also science. The second thing that we know is that the VCEA does absolutely nothing to address climate change, nothing. It does some stuff, we'll get into that in a moment, but what it doesn't do is address climate change. The reason it doesn't do anything to address climate change is because why? Because only 0.1% of the population of the planet Earth, Mr. Speaker, is fortunate enough to live in the wonderful Commonwealth of Virginia. So we're dealing with 0.1% of the population. Now, the University of Chicago's Energy Policy Institute recently conducted a survey where they said who has the most responsibility to address climate change. And state government literally did not rate. Corporations, federal government, global entities, emerging nations, literally state government didn't rate. But we're going to virtue signal on the backs of working Virginians by virtue of the VCEA that does not do anything literally to address climate change. But what it does do is takes from Virginia taxpayers and gives to solar developers. How much? Well, $215 a year this year to every ratepayer in Virginia. That's a month of groceries. Now, the University of Chicago's Energy Policy Institute also in their survey asked how much most people were willing to pay, and over 45% of Americans said they'd pay $1 a year. But right now we're paying $215 a year. By 2030, we'll be paying $314 per ratepayer per year. By 2035, $826 per ratepayer per year. And someone from the other chamber, Mr. Speaker, who I think thought they were clever said, and I quote, "This is how we stick it to Dominion." No one in this chamber on either side of the aisle is stupid enough, I don't believe, to believe that. We can't stick it to Dominion. We can't stick it to the electric co-ops because Dominion and the electric co-ops get their money from us, from our constituents on both sides of the aisle, to fund policy that doesn't work because the technology is not sufficient to meet the goals laid out in that very VCEA. It's not there yet. I have worked in solar development. So this is an attempt to wrest the money. Now there's an attempt to wrest the control of local government land issues because they are trying to meet goals that are unmeetable in a timeline that's untenable, right? When you make a mistake, the best thing that you can do is admit the mistake, address the mistake, correct the mistake, and move on. I once heard a joke about a man who walked into the doctor and says, "Doc, it hurts when I do this." The doc said, "Stop doing it." Ladies and gentlemen of the chamber, Mr. Speaker, we know that climate change is real. We know that the VCA doesn't address it. And we know that it does have an impact, but not on climate change, on our constituents. Rich, poor, urban, rural, regardless of race, ethnicity, or faith, to the tune of hundreds of dollars a month and increasing fourfold in the next decade. Mr. Speaker, they should change the name of the Virginia Clean Economy Act to the Virginia Clean Everyone's Account Out Act. That's the VCEA's true effect. And Mr. Speaker, with that truth, I will yield.
The delegate.